DB1 drum heads and cymbals allow all drummers to hit hard in the middle of the night without a single noise complaint. DB1 drum heads and cymbals provide the natural tone and genuine feel of an acoustic kit, but only produce 20% of the volume of acoustic heads. These are Evans' first drum and cymbals to include proprietary technology that allows for unmistakable and authentic feel, crack, and buzz of an acoustic kit at 1/5 the noise level. Drummers, your neighbors can sleep. Your midnight jam sessions can continue, all thanks to Evans, the most technologically advanced drumheads on earth.
Without any further ado, please welcome from beautiful St. Augustine Beach, Florida, Stan Lynch.
Have you got me?
I've got you.
Oh, good grief. Okay, good.
Playing a little guitar in the meantime. I love it.
Well, you gave me time to kill.
It's good to see you, buddy. Man, we've got so many people watching, Stan, as I knew we would. And it's great to have you here today. Thank you for joining me.
Let's not disappoint them.
I know we won't. Well, first of all, welcome back. Welcome home. I know you got off the road a week ago, or maybe even less than that, I think.
I think it was like, it'll be a week. Like, I think I crawled in here around 4 a.m, like, I think on Monday night about a week ago, but I don't remember anything for about 4 days. I think anybody who's been on the road will testify. It's like, I woke up, I went back to bed, I rinsed and repeated for about 3 days, and then then finally went, oh yeah, right, I got to empty the garbage. And, like civilian life came back quick.
Wow, man. I mean, what did it, I mean, we could spend the whole day just talking about what it was like to go back on the road after 30 years, but I think it's amazing that I'm so bummed I wasn't able to see a show, first of all, but I just think it's so great. I read the Rolling Stone article that they did on you and Mike, and it was so uplifting and so beautiful to hear both of you guys talk about your long friendship, your long history, and what it felt like to be back together playing. And maybe you can just take a second and just reflect on like that first gig when it all came, when the lights went down and it was time to just hit it. How did that feel?
Well, the truly the best part of being on the road for me was the brotherhood of like seeing Mike. I mean, for those that don't know, my history with Petty the Heartbreakers, like it didn't really end well. It was like, it was a very awkward time for me in my life and just everything. And there were a lot of things that should have been said, that could have been said. Michael and I were originally very good friends in the band. We were actually roommates early in the band. When we shared rooms, we did this for a couple of years together, and we were really close. And so a big loss for me was not having him in my life. Yeah. So the first thing when I showed up at his house, we hadn't even seen each other since probably the Hall of Fame, which is, I'm guessing, 20 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't really know what I was going to get, and I got exactly what I'd hoped for. I think the first words out of my mouth were something like, I love you and I missed you and I respect you. And then his response was perfect, Campbell. He goes, I deserve that. Which was like, we were right where we left off, right exactly where we, and I did. And as soon as we played, it was like, we both just kind of, well, practice is just so we kind of know when to stop and start.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not really about whether it's sort of biological. And most people that have been in bands will totally know this. It's like, if you've, I mean, since I was 15, I've been throwing my shoulder at Mike, and he's been kind of throwing it at me. So it's like, even though we're old and crusty and weird, it's still the same guy, it's like, and I think he felt pretty much the same about me. It's like, oh yeah, it's Lynch. He can take me for granted. He'd only look at me occasionally and remember like, oh, it's you. Like I could see it like, oh, like not you again. So it was really fun. And then, being able to put a button on that was the bonus for me. And then I got to talk to all the surviving members of the band, Ben Mott and Ron Blair are all still alive, and I love them.
Yeah.
And we all got to tell each other, via phone and communication, hey, I miss you, I love you. And that's at this point in my life. I mean, I don't mean to sound all mushy and hallmarky, but that's more important than anything, really.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave anybody. I don't ever want to leave it in shit. And that was music's great, that's all great to me. But if the love isn't there, I don't really, I'm not much of a mercenary soldier. I never really could do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm babbling. Move on.
No, Stan, that's beautiful. And I was thinking, I after reading the article in Rolling Stone, what you just said, and the things that you and Mike said in the article, I was thinking, you guys said it perfectly. You hadn't been you said I haven't been a drummer since I was in my 30s, and you hadn't been in the band, since you were in your early 30s. And man, what a difference life is, right, for all of us.
Oh.
30 years later, and how we look at things, and you look at like shit that seems so important and like something that might have bugged you, like, oh man, I can't believe he said that shit, or I can't believe he played that, or he did that. And now you look at those things, right? You go, what was I even thinking? Right?
Well,
I mean,
life, it's great if you're around long enough. Priorities really do reestablish themselves. I think about every 5 to 10 years. You just go like, well, and then that old question, like when I even asked Mike called me last year and he said, look, first off, Matt Loud, let's give him full props. This guy is a great drummer. And that's who's the drummer in Mike's band.
Yeah.
So when Mike called and said, you want to sit in, my first thought was like, well, shit, Matt's really good. And, and I've never had to learn anybody's charts. That was a freaky, that blew my mind too. And Mike said like, oh, we'll send you a couple records, you can learn them. And I'm like, I've never done that in my life. What is that going to be like? So I sat, because in that Rolling Stone thing, I think I said it, I called Greg and, Bissonette, and called Kenny Aronoff, and, like, what the hell do I do? How do I learn people's shit? And they were so funny. They were just cracking up. They were just going like, you're just such a dipshit, Lynch. Sit down, you chart it, you practice it. But the only way I could learn Mike's music was I just had to put it in the CD player, which I still have, and marinate in it. I just had to listen to it until I kind of pretended I knew what was coming next, because I could never, I kid, I'm not really a drummer. I'm a guy in a band, so it's like, once I'm in the band, I can figure it out. But I never could, like I watched Kenny play in St. Augustine. He came to town with Joe Cocker back when he was alive, and he walked up on stage cold and played the Bad Dogs and Englishmen version of chart for Cry Me a River, which is extremely complicated with like 3-4 time changes and things at the end, and he did it while sight reading and played it like he owned it, he just big balls. I was thinking like, that's probably 3 weeks of rehearsal for me.
But that's what him and Greg do.
He sat on my porch an hour before the show going like, I probably got to go down there and warm up, like, whoa. So that's the difference. And same with Greg, Greg asked me to play with him on it was a Ringo gig. And it's a song like you should know, like Little Help from My Friends. You should know that. But I figured like, well, I'm going to really learn it. And, I sat down, he sent me the video, and I acted like I didn't, but I shedded that for 5 days.
I love that. Yeah.
But it's like, I didn't want to do an impression of what that song is. I want to do it, you know? So, I love that about like certain drummers, I'm OCD, and I loved getting inside of Mike's music. And then of course you show up with Mike to play with Mike, and he's like, oh, I don't care. We're going to go. And he's everywhere. Mike is just like, follow the leader. He's very quixotic, mercurial. You never know what's coming next with Mike. It's great. It's scary and funny, and and when you make a mistake, you just the NBA, you put your hand up and foul out. And I got you.
Oh, by the way, I have to tell you, and I've told you this before. After you played with Ringo, when you played with A Little Help from My Friends, Greg called me the next day. He might have even had a video of it, but he called me the next day and said and told me how you absolutely killed it. And then you did tell me that story. You said, "Well, full disclosure, I did shed it, but I get it, Stan. I would, if I ever had that unbelievable opportunity, I would not want to let Ringo down and
Oh
fuck it
no.
up. Yeah. So
No, the coolest thing I want from that gig is for him to never turn around. Ringo was like, that felt fine. You know what I mean? Or Greg just to smile at me, but it's like, but I'm so fortunate to have access to those kind of really professional drummers when I was kind of going through last year going like, how do you do this gig? Because Matt went off and he'd already sort of emotionally left the building. He was off in Italy, mentally and physically and spiritually. And all he kept saying was, just do whatever you want. And it's like, that's not quite the advice I need, but and plus it's Mike. I don't want to fall flat.
Sure.
It's like my old buddy, but I love going out. I love doing that with him.
That's man, I remember you telling me about it, and I was so happy for you. And you, in your typical Stan Lynch sort of nonchalant, I'm going to go out with Campbell for, do some dates with Campbell. And I'm like, what? Like it was, you were so understated about it. And the hair in the back of my neck was standing up thinking about it. And I'm like, oh my God, I gotta hear about this. And then I know you had just, not long before that, you just got with Dixon Drums. So you had like a new drum company and that
was fun.
Yeah. And those guys provided drums for you, I think, right? Yeah.
Greg and Steve Bunk and Jim Udick, they all came, they've been great. Like they really rebooted a sound for me. Like,
yeah.
I think it was a year or so ago, I was trying to come up with a drum kit and I was thinking I probably ought to get a kit because I'm like, everything I own is probably 60 years old. So I was like, maybe I should look into some drums. And Greg was like, well, have you heard this company Dixon? And I'm like, no, I haven't. So he sent me audio files of him playing. And I'm thinking, well, Greg can play shoeboxes. They're probably, I'm sure they're fine. But he goes, no, they're really good. So they built me a kit, like an old, it's really cool, like a thermoglass, like an old Bonzo Ringo rooftop finish maple. And I love that kit. And it's just been, I couldn't take it on the road because rehearsals were in California, but they had Greg had an extra set of Dixons for me out there that I dragged on the road. And I wasn't even really aware, thanks to you, I wasn't really aware I was still with Zildjian, which is now owns Vic Firth. So that was really lovely to make one phone call and metal and food shows up. And so I was really I felt like milk-fed veal, man. It was really good.
That's great, man. The drums, I saw the video you sent me, the YouTube clip of you guys doing Running Down a Dream. And I know there's probably lots of stuff out there too that I'm going to check it out, but the drums sounded great. They look great. I've seen Greg play those drums a bunch of times with Ringo, and they are great sounding drums. Beautiful.
I think it's their Artisan series.
Yeah.
They're pretty good. And also there's Jimbo, the sound guy on the road, and they gave me a drum tech who was fantastic. So it was kind of like, it was pretty hard not to enjoy yourself, like to thaw me out after 30 years and go, yeah, here. And then Mike also made the ultimate thing. He said, look, if there's anything on the set list you just don't feel like you own, why don't we just not do it?
Wow.
And that was really a nice thing to say. But in a weird way, it was like, if something was uncomfortable, there were a couple of songs that were a little bit of math problem for me, but I wanted to do it so bad that ultimately I was the one going, can we do that? They were going, no, man, that song's a hassle. I'm like, no, I want to do it. Because it was like, I was so excited that I actually broke the code, but most drummers will know that feeling of like, once you know you can actually do it, you kind of really want to do it.
Yeah.
Like I was kind of bummed when they parked a couple of the songs. I was like, well, shit, I own these. I'm ready, So, but it was great. It was great to thaw out. And, it took me about, probably 4 weeks for my body to even remember, like to throw yourself at it, like really throw yourself at it. Like I was kind of playing, like I was still in my studio, like thinking about it. then one night, I don't know, I just went like, you know, it was a big fuck it. I went like, oh, right, that's drumming. Especially rock drumming. It's like there's this huge physical component to it. So while you can still do it, if you can throw yourself at it, you may as well. You know, it's going to hurt. Your hands are going to hurt. Your wrist might hurt tomorrow. Your ears are going to ring. But that's kind of the deal with rock and roll. It's a little ugly, and it's not really good looking at a certain age. I know you look a little stupid, but fuck it. If it makes you want to do that, just do it, you know?
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I learned, was get over yourself and just, you know, have some fun.
And how much time did you have, Stan, when Mike first contacted you and sent you the music? Did you have like a few weeks to learn those tunes and just sort of get back into, because I know you've been playing. I mean, you've been working in your studio and recording at home, but obviously that's a lot different from a 2-hour show.
Different.
Yeah.
And very different too when you're in the studio and you can edit and you can stop after 2 passes and reevaluate and listen.
Yeah.
I mean, the live thing is it's broken field running, you know. You have to be prepared, and you know, you're out of control. You know, no sound check, earbuds not working, cymbals at the wrong angle. Go. You know, you don't get to go like, hey, wait a minute. You know, it's like, and in the studio you go like, no, man, I don't like that. Turn the bass down, or give me more. Hey, you know, you know, you get to make so many excuses to get in the mood. And but I had a little time. Mike gave me plenty of time. He gave me like a month to marinate in the material. Then of course, when we get to rehearse, we got like a day and a half. So it was like a matter of hours, like just a few hours. And then we were off to like Denver, you know.
Wow.
So
yeah,
that's Mike. He's like, you know, he didn't want to burn out, and I get it. He's been playing in that band for 20 years. You know, he's been with the Knobs. He doesn't want to. He loves me, but not enough to just burn himself out to get me on the page. It's like, get on, man. You know. So I had to accept that too. Like, that's a challenge, and and as drummers will know, whoever's at the microphone, if that guy's not having fun, your life is shit.
Yeah.
So,
right on.
And I've learned that too over the years from producing. And if the guy he's there, if that guy's up there and it ain't happening, nothing's happening. So with Mike, it was like I had to kind of pull back and occasionally go, well, he seems pretty happy. Why don't we just go with Follow the Bliss? Let's just go. Whatever it costs me, it's nothing. You know, I'll be a little underprepared, probably look stupid. Shit, I don't care. As long as he's having fun, it's gonna be a fun night. You know, does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I was going to ask you, like, what at rehearsal, like, you probably, I mean, it was like you said, a question of just learning the endings, probably, right? Just kind of, I mean, you knew the form of I'm guessing you knew the form of the tunes for the most part, and it was just like, yeah, we end it this way. It's if it fades on the record, then you go, we end it this way. But it probably didn't need a lot of rehearsing, and I'm guessing it all just sort of gelled as you continued to play, right? I mean, that was your process with the Heartbreakers. I know it was like,
oh yeah, I mean, rehearsing was kind of like, I was the only guy who seemed to enjoy it. I remember that, like, you know, because it would be like full production rehearsal 2 days, and I'd be like, no, 2 weeks. You know, I want 2 weeks with the lights. I want to know what's gonna I was like, and they were like, oh, Lynch, we're gonna leave our fight in the gym. You know, it's like we're not gonna have anything left when they ring the bell. And Mike, I could have probably done the same thing, just because there's that old joke about the reason why professionals practice is so they can't make a mistake. You know, it's like it's like, that's sort of like, I'm more of that school, but I know other people are like, man, let it all hang out. You know, they already, they're already here because they like you. So, but it requires a lot more confidence than I could burp up after sitting on the bench for 30 years. I couldn't burp that up that quick. Now I'm fine. You know, it's fine.
Yeah. And so, and like physically, like endurance wise too, how was that to, you know, I mean, it's like, it's one thing to be shedding for like a month at home and you're learning the tunes, but then you get out there. And as you know, like, you're playing at another velocity, you're playing like at another physical level, you know, and how did that feel to like playing those
My
shows?
problem has always been I've been a mid-tempo guy. I love mid-tempo songs. I thrive right there.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of Mike's songs are very like Ramones oriented. Like
Yeah.
that was Mike's. He loves that. He loved the Ramones, and it's very. I don't even know what the tempo is. Like probably fast. You know, whatever, however you count it. But there are a lot of eighths. So I had to realize, like, you know, you can, and Kenny would say, well, you got to just practice, you got to muscle out the eighths, you got to muscle, you know, really play each eighth. And then Greg was like, no, you want to, you know, he has a different thing about, you know, kind of push, pull. And it turns out I can't do any of it. So you know, it's like a month going like, you know, and drove myself crazy. I actually gave myself kind of a mini carpal tunnel over it. Like, you know, just like trying to figure out why is it eighths are so disturbing for me. And then, you know, you go back to our God, Charlie, and you go, all right, a fast song doesn't need to be frantic, it can swing. And so what you do is it's like, and Steve Jordan did it too on the Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll, like with Chuck Berry. Like, it's like, you know, it's it can be there, but he's like,
yeah.
And so if you swing and the rest of the band's just grinding, it's kind of groovy. So, and Charlie is the master, and also the famous missing, you know, hat.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost 1, 2, 3, rest, 1, 2, 3, rest, 1, 2, 3, but it's a bitch. Like you think you're doing it, and then you hear it back on tape and you go, nope, I suck. And then one day I figured out kind of how to do it, sort of a bastard version. And I realized like that kind of worked for me. It like, I could still keep the starch, and I could actually keep the starch in the bass drum, like, you know, because that's, to me, is where it's like, I know Kenny says it's the hat, you drive the hat, and he's right, because there ain't no, but in rock and roll, there's so much chaos that if the boom, schmack, if those are pushing forward, the rest can kind of, it's a little bit loosier for me around there. And that saved me with Mike's, because he did a lot of tempo. I mean, a lot of stuff. He started with like freaking Running Down a Dream. So it's like, thanks for nothing. You know, like that was like how he opened, you know.
That's how you opened. Okay. Yeah,
it's like without a sound check, you know, sometimes like, you know, with Chris Stapleton and like some giant place like the Gorge, and you go, I don't even know what we're doing. And you just go out there and you have to just have faith that you're in a pocket, and hope that the rest of the band is communicating with you. It was really fun. I mean, I dig it. And I probably would have been more freaky and more unnerved a long time ago, but now it's just fun.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. It's fun to play the damn drums, man. You know?
Yeah. I'm so glad to hear you say that. And because I wondered that, you know, like if maybe, you know, maybe 20 years ago, you might have passed, you know, you might have said,
I would have.
You know, I got all this other stuff going on, and I'm kind of,
No, I would definitely would have passed. And I think it's also having been locked up with COVID, like for a couple of years. Like I was going like, well, if I'm gonna go out, this is probably as close to a scenario. There's a bubble, everybody's gonna test, and I'm not just going out to a rock and roll festival. I'm gonna be in my little hot house. So of course everybody got COVID anyway, but it's like, but there you go.
Did you get it? Did you get it too? Did you get it as well?
Finally did. I did so good. I made it for 2.5 years without it. Got it. I think I got it in Seattle, Washington, was where I think we traced it, my exposure.
Yeah.
And it sucked. Have you gotten it?
I did. I got it back. I'm just about at my end of my 3 months of immunity. I got it in mid-April, and
How'd you
not
do?
sure. I did fine with it, Stan. I had, you know, I had like the initial sort of scratchy throat, sore throat, kind of cold symptoms. Tested negative for a couple of days, and then finally, you know, I knew I had it, you know, and then I just isolated for about 5 days, and after about a week or so, I was feeling pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
Yeah. I'm glad you did okay too.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I can finally now I can smell a bar of minty soap. You know, it took that long. You know, it's like, oh look. You know.
I know.
Hey,
I know.
I'm hoping that's I know we're all still holding our breath, looking around at whatever the next version of this is going to be, and because I want to go out and go play with my band, you know, the Speaker Wars guys. I want to go, but I'm like, we're all watching that, and you know, everybody's on edge. I mean, are you gigging yet?
Yeah, we've been out gigging like a couple of times a month, and most of the stuff we've been doing lately has been outdoors, so it's been a little bit more,
Yeah.
you know, comfortable. And now we're going to take take about a month off. Excuse me, I'm going to be down in the vineyard for about a month and come back, and we do an outdoor show in August, and then we'll see what happens in the fall. You know, for
Yeah.
indoor stuff. So yeah, I know it's like you know, we're just gonna sort of wait and see and watch it closely and be smart about it, right? I mean, that's
You
what we
gotta
do.
be.
Yeah, it gotta be. But I want to jump backwards for a second because when you mentioned running down a dream, the video that the YouTube link you sent, and I was thinking exactly what you were saying. Man, that's a fast tempo, and it's I meant to clock it too. It's got to be about like 140 or something like that, maybe even 150 something. I mean, yeah, it's fast. And I saw and I think it was during the was it during the chorus that you were doing on the you were doing the Charlie thing on the hi-hat? I think you were playing the eighths, and then I think it was either
I think with when the verses, because they're tight, like Michael,
verses.
you know,
Okay.
songs that go dee 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 dee, they really have.
Yeah.
That's where the Charlie thing seems to really work,
Yeah.
because you can get your hats tight, you don't slosh, you know,
Yeah.
you can really articulate, and then when you want to swing, I went to I'm using an X hat,
I
which I
saw
think is
that.
really fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if many cats. I mean, Ringo obviously loves the X hat.
Yeah.
And what's really fun about it is that not only is if you leave it gapped and sloshy, it works as a really cool crash cymbal. Like when you don't want to go to a full kaboosh, you can just it's a thing. And it's and then when you want to just like, you know, we all, you know, like the Ringo, you try to get that really beautiful sloshy. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That and that number one and wherever that would be the number two rack tom slot is pretty groovy. I mean, I recommend it for drummers if you want a little ergonomic break sometimes, just from having your body all choked over too. It's like you kind of, you know how much fun it is to play a ride cymbal. Everybody
Yeah.
loves that.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
sometimes they tend to get lost and they just tend to get a little washy. And so that just tends to make a nice little, the sound man didn't seem to be too upset with it.
Yeah, I'm sure it worked perfectly, you know, for that exactly that situation, you know. It's like controlled and you know, it can be a little sloshy, but it's not out of control and yeah.
It's just a fun, it's just fun. It's also different dynamic. Like it doesn't sound like your other hi-hat because they never, no two hi-hats ever sound alike. And it's already pre-positioned to be where you like it. Like for me, it was just, I put a Vic Firth stick in it and drop the clutch. And that was right where it wanted to be.
Perfect. Yeah.
You
It's
know,
a great looking
so,
setup too. I love looks like you're playing 15-inch or bigger hats. Just it's only
no,
half
those are
was
they're 14s. I've been thinking
14s.
about going bigger. Steve Jordan was telling me, don't be afraid, step up, you know, step up, you know.
He would know. He would
Oh
know.
yeah. Yeah,
I'm
right.
going to read a couple of quick comments, Stan, if you don't mind. Our friend Lee Flyer, we were just talking about Lee, and she said there's a
Yes.
vibe you get from getting inside the song that, like that, which you can't really get from reading a chart, in my opinion. And she's right. Yeah,
Well,
it's
Lee's cool. We didn't talk on camera about her deep dive into Street Fighting Man, have we?
no, we haven't, but we
Because
can.
this is amazing. Like if you know, let's put a plug in for Lee, man, because if you go check out Lee Flyers, like it's a deep dive on how they made that record. And I know there isn't a drummer on earth who isn't just blown away when he hears that groove start. And she shows you in gory detail how that was put together piece by piece. And it's a really cool piece of music. And she's to be applauded because she didn't take it lightly. I mean, yeah, but she knows she's cool.
I'm going to check that out. I'm going to absolutely check that out. I think she had sent me a link a while ago, and Lee, I apologize if I didn't respond to that, but I think you did send me something on that, and definitely check it out. But I want to read you something that Michael Welch said. I was playing with a nice Caribbean group in St. Augustine in the early 90s, a place called the Mill Top. Went to the bar during break, and this dude says, "Nice band, you sound good." And I asked him if he was a musician. He said, "Yeah." I asked if he's in a band. He said, "Yeah." He told me the name of the band, the Heartbreakers. Such a low-key, no-ego guy. So, so I guess you met
That was
him.
probably before I got drunk. I'm sure later that evening, later that night, I was being thrown out onto the street.
No, no, no. That sounds just something like you would do. Very, you'd go up and say hello to a musician and, you know, pay a compliment and all that. So,
Man, speaking of good musicians, I saw some great ones out there on the road. Chris Stapleton's rhythm section, good grief. I
yeah,
mean, just amazing. I mean, but yeah, everybody on that tour could play, which was cool. There was no clock, there was no track. You know what I mean? It was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
it was a barbaric group of musicians that came to play, and I really enjoyed that because I know that isn't always the case. A lot of shows now are, you know, they're just a little different than that.
yeah,
May I
yeah,
put that kind as possible. So it was really cool to watch everybody counting off, and most of the bands didn't even really, like Greg had told me, like, if you go out with Mike, you should probably tempo map everything, because you want to make sure. And I was like, I mentioned that to Mike and he's like, nah, fuck that. I'm going to count them off. So it's like, fine. And he goes, if
oh,
it's too slow, you'll know what.
yeah,
And I love that. And I noticed that with most of everybody else was playing, there was very little, you see a lot of looking at each other and counting off. And I think there's something bonding just in that experience of like the count off, because you're not sure sometimes too, you'll be like, is it 1, 2, 3, 4? Is it 1, 2, 3? So just the confusion of a count off alone
yes,
creates just enough where, like, are we all focused here? Like, you really got to zero in. And then the fact that, like, the bass player in the knobs, Lance, is looking at me going, he's counting it off too slow right off the bat. He's already telling me, like, put your foot in it. So there's already this excitement of like, where the hell are we going to land when we count 4? Which to me is something, there's something really beautiful. And that's what I miss about live records. I mean, when those records we used to make in the old days, there's a bond that occurs in the intro. You hear them, everybody going, is this really a take?
yeah,
And you hear they settle into that first verse, and then they congratulate themselves by the second chorus. And then by the end, they're all taking victory laps and going crazy. So it's, there's this bond that happens when there isn't a clock and there isn't a computer and there isn't a built-in time that we all know is the perfect time. And also you got to read the room. This
right
is
on,
like,
yeah,
this is a bar, man. We gotta pick, we can't, it's not going to work. We got to, whatever it's going to be, or maybe we got to back it down. I just think there's something lost when you over prepare. I mean, I'm not saying you should suck, because that's a terrible way to live, but in terms of those tempos, and I just think there's something fun about wrestling for it a little bit. It's very real.
I love that you're saying this, Stan. It's in such a small way in my world, I can relate to it. Just in that all us drummers, I think, can, when you've got competing factions within a band and what people think the time should feel like, and you're kind of the guy in the middle trying to, and maybe even you even sort of have a pretty good idea of where the time should be, and maybe it's even different than the other two guys think. But I go through that a lot, and one guy likes everything slow, one guy likes everything really up.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It really is hard. We can laugh about it, but it can be a little, frustrating too.
Don't let it get stressful.
Yeah.
Like, what it should be is, like, I think Bill Wyman described it as a wobble. Like he said, the really beautiful Stones wobble is like that one guy is sort of behind it, one guy's in front of it, and one guy's sort of on it, and it's okay. I mean, I think the best records kind of, I mean, I know it's probably just sounds like I'm making excuses for sucking, but I'm not. It's like,
No, come on.
there's a grace in that things, they should wander, and they should want and follow the passion, and they should follow the words. And if the singer's feeling it tonight, go with it. You know, there's your North Star, you know.
Yeah.
The guy Mike, I've always said, is like, you know, turn him on.
Yeah.
And you're probably getting close.
Did you find that live, that like the tunes that Mike sent you, the record, like did he tend to count them a little faster just because they were live? Like, did you find that they were maybe a little faster than what you were used to playing them when you learned them, or was they pretty much? I'm just curious if they were.
Mike's pretty good.
He's pretty good, yeah.
He's got a lot of experience. You know, Mike, you know, he's been good for a while. You know,
yeah.
like,
oh yeah. I'll say.
He was good when I was a little boy. You know, I remember, you know, seeing him in a bar when I was a kid. We were the opening band for his band, and I remember thinking, I don't even know who this guy is, but damn, he's good. You know, he's just good. So Mike he's pretty dependable, and he usually calls bullshit on himself. If he counts one in and it's a little lopey, he'll give you the happy foot, like, you know, he's like, come on, you know, and and he's not upset about it. It's not like he's pissing at you about it. It's just more like, if you can lean forward, probably help us out, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yep.
And I love too, at a certain point with bands, if you can get there with your band, whoever's listening, if this applies, get to a place where you can all agree that this is a pretty weird thing to be doing anyway. Like that we're really all going to try to land in the same place and be great together. It's like a photo session.
Right.
Somebody's always picking the nose, you know what I mean? Or you got your eyes closed.
Yeah.
I mean, you're never going to get it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where like Pro Tools is kind of the Photoshop of the music world. It's like, yeah, we can make it perfect. But my advice would be to try to embrace whatever human quality your band is, because that is what's going to make you special. Whatever that weird thing is that you knuckleheads do, I would embrace it, you know, even if it means we kind of suck, fall apart at the end, we never get the endings right. That's your thing.
Yeah. No, exactly. Warts and all. That's what makes it fun. Yeah. To be able to just not laugh at it, but just have it be fun. You know,
well, laughing at it helps too. I think it's all of the above. I think I've had a belly full of worrying about music, you know, and I think playing music, like I was kidding the guys in the band. I said, you know, look, this is a sandbox for me. I've got my little toy in the sandbox. Would you come in the sandbox and play with me? You know, it's like, don't just look at me and don't, you know, I don't want to do this by myself. It's like, it's an extension of whatever personality you are. Being in a band is, to me, it's just a pit of like, you know, I kind of dig being around guys and girls that like to make music. So I would never want to bum anybody out.
Man, no, what a great, the word that comes to mind to me, Stan, is like a gift that for all of us, you know, for you, for Mike, for everybody, but for all of us too, for you guys to play together again, you know, after all this time, and have it feel so good, like emotionally and musically, and there had to be some pretty heavy emotional moments too. I know they sort of hinted around that in the Rolling Stone article too, with the heaviness of it, you know.
It was cool. I mean, it was cool, like walking down, like there's some pictures that people have been sending me where like Mike and I are walking down a corridor, and we have the exact same body posture with each other that we did from 45 years ago. Like I'll always be leaning into him laughing, and Mike will always be looking at me going, and it's like, it's amazing. I'll send you some pictures because it's just funny as shit. Like we just, you know, Michelle, my gal, was out with us on the road, and she would say, God, she had never met Mike. So she says, half the things he says, I've heard you say the whole time we've been together, you know? So she goes, I didn't realize that how close you got, you know, it's very, it was nice. And we both kind of went through a little withdrawal at the end of it. A day later, Mike called me and I called him at the same time going like, well, do you miss me? And he's like, kinda, you know, like, I guess I do a little bit, you know, like, so But that's nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I could totally see that happening. Yeah. You know, who knows what the future holds with that, you know, and we can just, if
It
it's, if
doesn't have to hold anything. That's
it,
what's nice. It
yeah, I get it. Yeah.
doesn't have to be, it's it's just fun, you know.
Yeah.
That's really, I don't have any delusions that this has to, like, you know, it doesn't have to go further. It doesn't, it's just, my entire mantra for the whole trip for the months was, I just want this to be positive
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
everyone. I just want this to be a good thing, you know, and the minutes it's a bad thing, let's correct that right now. There's no reason to have anything be bad here. You know, let's fix it. We're all grown men. We're all powerful. We're all the CEOs of our own companies. Let's do it. You know, let's agree that we can make this better right now, you know? So that's a difference from being a young man with ego and, you know, and all that shit. You know, it's nice not to have any of that anymore.
Yeah. I was just going to say that too. Again, the benefit of just being older and wiser and, you know, like having done all the other things that you've done in your life since then, to not have to think about all that. You know, like you've got nothing to prove. Mike's got nothing to prove. Yeah, and it makes it all fit perfectly.
The thing that Michael said a couple of times to me when things would get testy or like something wasn't going quite the way we thought it would, he would just say, like, look, I don't even have time to get mad at that. You know what I mean? There's not enough days in my life left for me to donate anything but love to this. So, and that makes perfect sense to me. It's like, you know, who's got time for this at this point in my life? You know, like, I can't, you know, like, that's a horrible idea. You know, it'd be like taking a bath and shit. What's the point? You know, it's like, there's no upside.
Exactly. And so just to talk a few more minutes about that, because I do want to talk about the speaker wars and the chefs and other things that you're working on. But did you guys? I was going to ask you, were you doing any singing in the band? Did you?
Yeah, Mike and I. It's funny because Mike, he sings a little bit like Tom. He's got a little of that phrasing, I guess, just because since he was a little boy, that's what he does. And we did a couple songs. I'll send you something. It was a old song that Tom and I used to sing. It's kind of a duet called Stories We Could Tell. It's a Everly's John Sebastian song.
Yes. Yeah.
And we would close the shows with that together. And it was pretty cool. It was like just the two of us, you know, we just go up and sing. And we tried a few Petty songs, you know, we would do them, but we didn't really practice them. So sometimes they were good. Sometimes they were kind of funky, and I don't know, it's fine. It was fun to, you know, but in his band, he had Jason Sinet and Matt. I'm sorry, not Matt. God, why can't I? Lance Morrison, of course. They're both great singers, and that's a band. Like, I was in, these guys are already, you know, I think they've been together 18 or 19 years. Yeah. So they kind of had their shit dialed in pretty good, you know?
Dig it. Yeah. Yeah. I just wondered, like, I know you did a couple of Petty tunes, like Listen to Her Heart and Refugee.
We tried a couple times.
Yeah.
They made me do Psychotic Reaction, which is something I used to do back in the old days.
Oh, man.
They broke that out on me to make, you know, like, just to make the complete idiot out of me, which was fine. I can handle it. So, you know, it was funny. It was just fun every night. It was all audibles. I mean, the set list was sort of there, but I quit looking at it after about the first song, because even that was sometimes wrong.
So can I just ask, was Psychotic Reaction like an audible one night? Did Mike just call it and you guys do it, or did you actually did he say, let's put this, I think, you know, give it a listen?
At soundcheck, he just said something like, do you remember Psychotic Reaction? And he just started it. So it was already committed. It wasn't like, but that's bands. You don't talk about this shit. You either do it sucks, and you never do it again, and you go, that'll work, you know? So I think we got about a minute and a half into Psychotic Reaction at a sound check, and Mike went like, that's great. We'll probably do that. I'm like, okay. You know, so it's that sleazy, but it works right.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I used to love seeing you guys do that, man. You killed that song.
As I've gotten older, it's a little harder.
Yeah, not an
But
easy song to sing and play either. I mean, by no means.
it's not that hard to sing. It's just mostly there's like that crazy ass double time, like freak out that,
Yeah,
you just,
yeah,
what does the guy do? It's like, it's, what is it? Mike told me a great line about Mick Fleetwood, because he played with Fleetwood Mac.
yeah,
And
yeah. That's
he
right. Oh,
said,
yeah, that's right.
Mick Fleetwood, he said, because I said, of course I had to know as a drummer, like, Mick, tell me about Mick. And he said, yeah, one of the cool things about Mick is that his groove is always great. And he never wants to, and this is Mick's words, be a desperate Dan, which I thought totally covers what drummers don't want to be. Like
Yeah,
especially Mick, because Mick's smooth. He's like a big horse, he just, once he gallops, but it never looks frantic. And
never. Yeah,
and so that at a certain age, I was aware of that. Like, why would this happen? I don't want to be a desperate Dan. So I stole that from Mick, which is like, I think that's a cool thing for a drummer of a certain in your life. I mean, I'm not saying that being a frantic drummer is bad. I think it's great, but certain times in your life, you just want to be chill, even
yeah,
if you're playing.
yeah.
Once again, Charlie and Ringo, look no further than how you play amazingly aggressive drum parts, yet it feels and swings like the baddest shit in the world.
You
So
have that down too. You really do. And I know everybody watching would agree with me. You have that elegance of like, and I think it was that BBC show we were talking about earlier, off camera, about Charlie, and I'm trying to think of who it was. If it was Steve Jordan or someone talking about how, or it might have been Don Was talking about how they played these tempos that were actually faster than you'd think, but because they played sort of behind the beat, or Charlie was behind the beat, it kind of gave it a more, it didn't give it a rushed feeling. Do you know what I mean? And I think like you
oh yeah,
have, yeah, and you
it's
have so much of that energy where you can. I listen to so much stuff that you play, Stan, and it's so hard to cop it, the feel, because you have that.
it's not intentional. There's nothing I'm doing that's remotely planned. It's but I think it's all in who we imprinted on. Like as a baby duck, I imprinted on, you know, Charlie Ringo and Mick Fleetwood and those guys. They were just like my heroes. They made it look like, I won't say effortless because that's not the word, but it just looked right. It's like, and then other drummers, you can see them and you go like, sounds good, but shit, that's a lot of work. Like,
Yeah,
like it,
yeah,
it's just didn't feel as sexy or something. I don't know what the word is. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I love when it, when you're catching a good groove with a band, and because nobody has to play that much, which is even cool in a four piece, which I hadn't really played in a while. Like it was
yeah,
just four guys, two guitars, bass and drums. When it's grooving and it's actually working, you see everybody's hands are almost like playing at half speed. Nobody's chopping wood.
yeah,
It's so cool. Like the rhythm guitar players are shit's just coming off of them. And you realize like, oh yeah, this must be, and you can feel the power because you hear the PA and you're in an arena. So you hear the big, you got the big sound, but you go, oh, this is how the big boys do it. So every gig is a chance to learn something.
mm,
I gotta believe that even the Stones right now, that Steve is learning something every night he's playing. I gotta
yeah,
believe that. It's not, you can't phone that shit in a rock and roll
right,
band. He's got it every night. He's intuiting this thing and he's catching the Mick and Keith and it's such a great opportunity to, like the 2 ears, listen with both sides of your fucking head because there's a
yeah,
lot going on. And if you can get a band to listen to you and you can listen to them as a drummer, man, it's a conversation. It's happening. Like I do not like just playing the drums and nobody's listening. I know
right,
that we're all doing the right parts, but I hate it when I go and find out that this guy in his headphones has only got his bass. I fucking hate it. And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
not that I expect him to have my drums, but I expect him to have enough of them where he's, if I change a part, at least he'll look over and go, oh, you know.
Yeah.
And I love that communication in a band. It's intimate. It's actually it's very intimate. It's almost like we got to be buddies to do this. You know,
Right.
we've actually got to be pals.
I'm so glad you said that, because I keep thinking, you know, and this is about you, not about me, but I think about how different I approach it now that I'm older than I did when I was younger in terms of listening. And even when I thought I was listening as a young drummer, I really wasn't. You know, I was really kind of listening to me, kind of trying to dig
Right.
my shit, right? And now it's like, to your point exactly, Stan. I'm not even listening to what I'm doing. I'm listening to everybody, and just taking it all in and going, okay, he's going there. I'm going to try to get him to come with me over here. You know, we're going to do this together or whatever it is. And yeah, it's a whole different world, isn't it? I mean, that listening is like, it's so important. It's the whole thing. It's the secret. That's really not a
Really,
secret, but yeah.
it's the secret.
Yeah.
Yes. In order to be a good musician, you have to receive and telegraph. You must be able to take in information on the fly, not just when it's convenient for you. It's like you have to. I kind of refer to it as seeing around a corner. Like you have to be able to kind of like, okay, I kind of know where the song's going, so I know what's going to happen up the road, but I don't really have to get into that mode. I'm just kind of going to be right here and listen. And it's fun to be in a band with a bunch of guys that are actually pretty damn good. You know, like everybody in Mike's band could play the shit out of their instruments. So it was like, I was the weakest link, you know. It was like, it took me a while to get on the beam, you know. It's like, and Matt is such a different kind of drummer too. Matt's on it. Matt is like, if there's a place to be on the groove, he's there. I'm consistently somewhere around it. And so it took him a minute to realize, like, oh yeah, right, okay, we can kind of hang with this guy. So it was really fun. But yeah, being in a band's great. And that takes me to Texas, where I'm hopefully going to see what we can do out there. That'll be good too. I'm excited. Now that I'm playing, I kind of want to keep playing a bit.
Yeah. And so these will be gigs that you guys will do? There'll be shows?
No, we're
recording.
rehearse. We're going to actually, the Speaker Wars band is started with John and I. He's a writer, really good writer, good singer. Then as we started to record, he was bringing in his posse to make the records. And I was going, oh, I love what that guy's doing. So he was just saying, like, because I had a thought of playing live ever, like at the time. I was like, I'm just writing songs with John. Yeah. And John was the one who said, like, why don't you come out to Texas? We'll get a rehearsal room. I'll bring some guys in. And he's bringing in some wonderful guys. I don't know if you know who Andy Timmons is?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Andy's going to be playing with us, and he's fantastic. I mean,
great.
He's a little, like, he's intimidating. He's so good, you know, like, so it's going to be fun. And then John's got great guys already so we're going to try and flesh out the songs. We got a lot of songs. We'll see which ones seem to work. And then we'll probably go play, you know, either in Texas and Florida. It's kind of fun. And I'm invested in the material. Like, I have a creative stake in it, you know. I
sure
help build it, you know, and help write it and produce it. And I love John. So really, I was sort of thinking this was going to be John's project. And he's the one who said, like, well, come play. And I'm like, ah, shit. But after Mike, I kind of made sense, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And then the same with Dan Baird and Joe Blanton with the Chefs guys. I suspect, because Dan Baird is he's just a standalone freak. I mean, he's just great. So at some point, I think, unless I'm like misjudging them completely, I think they're going to call me and go, like, we should go play. And that'll be a fun band to play with too, because that's a hand grenade. You know, you just pull the pin on those guys. It's like, you know,
I downloaded the music today, you know, after we were emailing each other, and just went onto iTunes and grabbed it. You're right. I mean, it's some great playing and some really, high energy stuff that's I'm
Well,
really looking forward to digging into.
Dan holds the patent on that kind of rhythm guitar and singing, because he's the guy from the Satellites. I mean, he sounds like that guy. He can't stop himself. So everything that comes across your desk is gonna be that. And what was fun about making that record is they didn't have a keyboard player, so I got to do all the keys on it, which was really fun for me because that's a real challenge, especially when you play with guys like Ben Montench and you know how good it's supposed to be. So you're like, oh shit, it's but it was really fun. Like they would, I'd get my drums figured out, and we built the records. In both these records have been done in quarantine, so you know how that is. It's drives you nuts and I hate it, but that's just the way you had to work this last couple of years.
Right. And you got it done though, and that's
I'm happy, and it's also it made me a better engineer, maybe a better player, maybe a better writer, maybe a better producer, maybe better, at everything. Better guitar player. Makes you everything when you have to hear yourself back and you see in the stark truth of your limitations, and you go like, I have to practice today, it's like, and that's a beautiful thing. Like just even with the knobs, it's like, Michelle would say, where are you going? I'm going to be up at the studio. Like, I'll see you in about 3 hours. I got some practicing to do. I'm going to be doing 2 shows up there, I'll do 45 minutes. I'm going to take a break, it's like, so I realized, and that's what a lot of guys do. I talk to Steve Lukather, and every morning he plays for an hour, at least. Greg Bissonette playing hours, hours every day. Stuart Smith every day. These guys they play. And I did not, I was sandbagging pretty hard in my last couple of decades. And I realized, right, if I want to stay tuned up just enough to at least answer the phone and go like, yeah, I can play tonight, sure, I can come down. I was probably acting like I didn't want to do it for a lot of reasons, but the truth was I didn't know if I could. So when so you nut up or shut up, and you just kind of go like, all right, guess I'm a drummer. Better learn how to play the damn drums.
No, I totally get it. I just find it, you saying that just, it I guess if nothing else, you humanize the whole idea of it, to mortals like us.
Well, I get to cheat because I have records that you're still, you hear. So you just figure, oh, he must be playing. No, he's not. That was a long time ago. And I know that it's like, because I've known a couple of guys, my contemporaries, I go like, man, you sound great. And he goes, well, you haven't heard me in a while, have you? It's like, it's like, but when you hear those records, I know that, Mike pointed that out too, because being around Mike, he would, the power of both of us in a room, people would come in and want to talk to us about stuff. And I'm like going, wow, yeah, but we just heard this. We heard 5 songs today. And I'm like, Mike's like, aren't you aware that this is happening? And I'm like, no, I'm kind of out of it, So it was really sweet that he kind of reintroduced me to my old life. It was kind of nice. It was pretty cool. I enjoyed it.
That's so great to hear. And if I can ask too, when you said a really, important thing when you said, tune up. And I think that's something that, again, a lot of drummers probably want to learn more about in terms of like being able to sit down, and if they haven't played a lot lately and they're a little rusty, like, were there things that you focused on just to like, because I mean, just playing alone obviously will do that too, but I mean, did you like focus on certain things as far as like your hands or your feel, like trying to play smooth and loose? And
well, I think the key is, it's not if you can play well for a minute. Everybody can sit down and blow a little thunder out their ass for about 30 seconds. Every drummer's got like their version of Wipeout that they can sell for about, it's like, but the truth is, all of that is, I won't say it's bullshit, because this is where you get into some serious conversations about what is drumming. But drumming to me is the beat. It's just that simple. It's the beat. Now, how you get there, I don't give a shit. If you get there by playing Satisfaction, great. If you get there by playing Yes Trilogy, great. But the beat is, so you practice making sure you can sit down, and sometimes a clock will help. Like I did that. I would just put more of a sympathetic click or a shaker. I just don't, the metronome sometimes just is kind of hard boils my head after a while.
Yeah.
I feel like it's, Munchausen by proxy or whatever it is, or Stockholm syndrome. I start to love it and hate it, so it's, so you get a seduction and play, I imagine most drummers my age probably started playing along to records. We probably played to records. Not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a good record. Some are hard to do because they do speed up and slow down. Hard to play sometimes to an early Who record because they're wild, but even Zap, like, because it's so beautiful, but don't worry about it. Precision isn't the thing you're looking for when you're practicing. I don't think you're looking for muscle memory. You're looking to be able to breathe. And I did that while we were playing a lot. I would go through my little mantra breathing exercises. I would do I'm 100% safe in this moment. I'm going to breathe from head to toe. I would be like, I'm going to relax every part of my body, including my kegels. I'm going to make sure that I'm not as clenched, and like, so practicing just like, getting your posture where you feel like, I feel comfortable when I sit down. Like if there's anything uncomfortable, practice getting rid of that.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
Bothering you when you sit down to play the drums, what bothers you? Like, what is pissing you off? Let's address it. Is it a logistic issue, or is it just you haven't muscled it out enough? And like the hat thing was killing me for 2 weeks. I was just sitting here with the metronome trying to figure out the Mo's or whatever that is, the up, down, trying to figure that Moeller technique. Right.
Yeah.
That's what. And it was like, do I saw left and right? And I was becoming this fixated dweeb, like, honey, right? It's like, what's that got to do with anything? Like close your eyes, hear your beat. Sometimes record yourself is fun.
Yeah.
Just make sure you're playing what you really think you're playing. And your sound is so important too. Like I had to practice figuring out where my snare basket tightness was again. Like it was too tight somehow. I was like, I'm not getting enough boof, I'm not getting, so I was like, okay, let me take it apart, put the pro sound wires on it. Let me try a different cable, a little different cord, make sure I'm backing those off just right. The bottom head too tight, like a lot of experimenting. And while you're practicing, that gives you practice for an hour and you tweak your drums for an hour because you need a break anyway.
Yeah.
Then you sit there and you go, I really fucked that up. Doesn't sound any better now. So the trial and error is what practice is, and try not to get frustrated. Know that every hour you invest behind your drum kit will pay off. It's like, it's paying off right now. You just don't know it because it's such a gradual, if you have to chart it on a graph, you go, am I getting better? Oh God, not really. But, over a month, fuck yeah. It's like, all of a sudden you realize I'm not looking at that symbol anymore. I'm doing the little double things I like. I'm all the things that you fantasize that make a good drummer, work them in, just work them in. But remember the beat. Like if your beat is shit, I don't think you have much to sell.
So important. No, you're absolutely right. So important. No, that's
the sound is just important, as you well know. I mean, God, drummers go crazy looking for sounds. And I found that the little felt, this cool Remo makes a felt embossed head now on the bass drum.
Oh yes, I've seen those. Yeah.
I finally, the sound man said, why don't we try one? And it was like, holy shit, that's fun. It's very papery, but with the microphone and catching it, it was like, this is kind of groovy, so it's fun when you fall on shit. And every drummer's got an idea of what drums sound like. God, man, people sit down, I sat down in my kit a couple of times and went like, are you really going with that? Like everything's honking and farting and buzzing. And it turned out I had to turn the 57 kind of off access on the snare drum because it was just picking up way too much honk. Even Campbell was going like, it's always that noisy. I'm like, I like it. I don't want any bottle on my snare drum, but it just finally about 4 shows into it, Jimbo went like, what if I just, and then we moved the overheads a little differently.
Yeah.
Like, cause he was a little more forward, it was getting more of like, really the overheads are the snare drum. That's really all they are for me. Everything's a snare mic for me, except the bass drum mic. So, you know, I think that's what practice is for. It's just getting, where do you put your sticks? What do you do if you drop a stick? Do you know where all that stuff is
all that
fun
stuff.
to think about.
Yeah.
Like,
Important stuff too.
I had to practice with inner ears. I'd never done that. That was horrifying.
I was going to ask you that because I was thinking you probably, when you were still touring with Tom, you were using, wedges, right? I mean, that was.
I had side fills.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I've seen pictures. Yeah.
My drum PA was so insane. I mean, I probably told the joke. I hit the bass drum, my hair would move. It's like so loud that So I went to inner ears, and I went into shock because I put them both in first, and it was horrible. I was like most attached, and everybody in the band went like to a man, went like, take one out. It was like, duh. Yeah. So basically the inner ear's cool. You pick up a little of your drum overheads or whatever you like, and vocals. It's kind of nice. I get it. It's not quite what I wanted, but I understand. I understand why it's so, nothing's feeding back on stage. Thank God. I never heard anything take off.
That's great. What did you like to have in your ears for drums? Do you have your whole kit or like kick, snare, hi-hat?
I think for me, it's probably a little bit of kick and overheads is probably really a drum sound.
Yeah.
Like if I had to go with a drum sound tonight, it'd be a bass drum mic and 2 overheads. That's really a drum sound to me. I don't really know any. The other stuff is great, and it's great that the sound man has all that for control, or when you're making a record, of course you need that. But really for a rock, for my idea of the pandemonium I'm trying to do, that's really it. As long as I got a good little slug of that downstairs, and usually I think they even had a sub on stage for me.
Yeah, great.
And the sub picked up a nice kick drum, gave you a little, a feeling of manliness. And so the bass was in the sub, and then probably in here was just my overhead, so good thwack, and a lot of Michael's vocal, just so I knew where we were in case anybody was doing something weird. I could go, oh, there's where we are. And really everything else, guitars are, I don't know about you, but I don't care what amplifier a guitar player plays to, guitars are loud. Damn loud. I mean, I think those guys were playing through Princeton's, but whatever they were using for pedals and alternates, and I mean, I'd sit down and play my drums, and they go, "These sound great." And then, as soon as they play, I go, "Where'd my drums go?" Because two big, loud rock and roll guitars. When they turn up a Telly and a Les Paul, it's like, whoa! All of a sudden, you're kind of under the waterfall. It's like. So, but that's part of the charm of it too. And that also makes you. That whole thing too. I don't know if you still experience it, but I do. Where like I walk out and if I can't hear myself, I tend to overstate myself. I tend to overplay. I mean, not overplay, but overwork, and then that robs your chops. And all of a sudden you feel like you're playing like shit. Yeah. And then you realize like, okay, let me back up, find my sweet spot. But my sweet spot, oh shit, I can't hear myself.
I know. It's a vicious cycle. I know. Yeah. It's
I found that by walking out and counting 4 and just not overextending myself early, it's like if you can go to 10, I'm usually somewhere in the 7, volume in terms of what I'm putting heart and how, and usually the sound man will come and get me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yep. Or and because I'm not hitting limp wristed. I'm actually, I'm hitting, I'm just not clubbing.
Right.
Never broken a cymbal, which I think is probably a good sign. I don't think I broke a head. I've never broken a head. I've dented a couple. Shit, I don't think I broke a drumstick the whole tour. So I'm not killing it, but
it looked like you were playing with like a medium velocity just by watching. Yeah. I mean, you weren't playing really soft, but you weren't bashing. Yeah. It was like the perfect.
Well, you need dynamic. And if you come in screaming, it's like
nowhere to go.
You can't, you're dynamic. dynamic with your bandwidth is kind of sucked out. You don't really have, you can't certainly get any louder.
Right.
And, you know, but I think dynamics, that's hard in a rock and roll band because they're loud and they're getting it, you know?
Yeah.
So, and all guitar players have to turn up, you know, it's kind of cheating, you know?
I know.
Turn up, you know, I got to get, so I think practice, when you talk about practicing, practice where your mechanics. When do you know you're in the sweet spot? When you feel like you're actually playing, try to do that when you play live. Make sure you bring a little of that so you remember where that feels like. You know what I mean? Like clock that, clock it in your mind. This is where I feel like I'm actually catching the groove. What is happening? Like, is my arm up here? No, is it, you know, clock all the positions of it. So when you're on stage in battle mode, you can go, wait a minute, this isn't my sweet spot. You know, something's, and I think that's just kind of good to know.
That's great. Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah. And you have your body sort of almost memorize where it needs to sit and feel when to lock in, like you say, like where you're, you know, are your arms way out here like this, or are you know, just comfortable, you know? Yeah, I know. I totally know what you're saying too, Stan. I can relate to so much of what you're saying too, because I know when I find myself fighting it, it's because things aren't comfortable. Yeah, it's not comfortable, and you got to be.
You really are. Your kind of your vocabulary is now limited. You know, you have everything's truncated. Like, what happened to those cool licks? All my roughs are gone. You know, all my little slurs are gone. All my grace notes are gone. You know, and it's like it's also you'll never outrun volume. You'll never find a place where you go, now I've max, you know, you'll just get louder and louder and shittier and shittier. That's my experience anyway.
Oh man, this is great. This is gold. I want to thank you. You know, I've kept you on here a long time, and I promised that I wouldn't. So I want to thank you for doing this today. It's
a pleasure to talk to you, man. I hope something in there resonates. You know, I really do. I hope something in that makes sense to somebody.
Absolutely,
it's
it does.
A pleasure to talk to you.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you too, and yeah, I feel like I had a million more things, but we'll save that for a phone call and
sure.
Yeah.
Call me later.
All right. All right. Well, everybody, thank you.
Talk to you later.
All right. Thank you, Stan. I'll see you soon. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in today.